out, and they just realize right away that's what they want to be. They want to be strategic partners to the business. And so we're really feeling well positioned at the moment.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I'd second what Terry just said about, regionally, we're a global company. I've been around for probably 30 years now. So the technical architecture, we try to stay away from that, even though we have the capabilities. And that's where we cut our teeth as a true product, is in enterprise architecture and the technical architecture. As you move left in the spectrum of, technical being on the right, and you move to the left, applications are in the center. Everybody wants to do application rationalization. Well, you can do technical rationalization with life cycles, right? With vendor information. It's the SPM spaces. We actually consciously removed ourselves from Gartner because they were doing EA evaluation, and it's more of a technical architecture, even though they're trying to change that story now as the SPM, strategic portfolio management. So we're a strategic portfolio management company. We are full spectrum, ideation, all to execution. We have Agile, we have ID innovation tooling, we have Agile, who connect all the tools that are in the tech task space like Jira, ADO, and version 1, and all those tools. We build teams of teams, and we actually move that all the way up to the portfolio. And that's where business architecture comes into play, right? How do I rationalize the applications is because of business architecture is the real why I have stuff. So we're seeing that happening more and more as we go. The app rash is, and the best most people are doing right now in capability in business architecture is capability assessments, and they're usually high level. They're not at the capability instance, which is the real enablement of capabilities. So they haven't got to that point that they can manage that breadth of task, right? So they have to come up, and the business wouldn't understand it anyway, but they really want to know the real impact. You really have to get involved at the business level, and it really is a process level. And that's where, one of our products called Agile Place has the ability, or Viz has a value stream flow matrix that are in there that can actually tell you how much capacity your company has. So that's where the business architecture now starts to have the OKRs, the KPI answers to results. And that's where we're seeing the most value. And actually that product is actually driving the business. And then we can actually catalog as an architectural platform, catalog all that work that they're doing in DevOps, that are making the changes, the features and functions of the products.
Cool. What they said. With Dassault Systems, we have a very vast number of tools ranging from business architecture all the way down through manufacturing and out the door. So it's really hard to say, what do you want to hear, right? Mm-hmm. Do we want to talk about enterprise architecture? Do we want to talk about process? Do we want to talk about systems? Do we want to talk about software? Manufacturing, name it, right? So when we look at the business architecture, it's how to really keep all of that in sync, and where and when to deploy or when to look at something is what we have as a solution for your organizations to really see all of it in one grasp. Doesn't matter what division or engineering domain you're in at that time, but to really allow everything to really talk with one another and increase that collaboration space. When it comes to an architecture or a business driver for you, you really look at what is your end goal, right? And taking a tool, no matter whose it is, it's really how do you provide it the data at the end of the day that gets you to that, and how these tools interact with one another. So if we talk about interoperability, it allows that to really help scale your business, right? At the end of the day, the goal is to see what the business can give you. And any type of architecture allows that. Enterprise architecture always should be, in my opinion, would be at the forefront of that, and how that would talk with one another from a capability to a requirement to an execution, right? So if we look at that spectrum, what can you be successful with?
Cool, thank you. So do we have any online questions at the moment? We have one in the room, excellent.
So
Please.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So my team was just the team that was up presenting, and they said, we don't have a tool. The story behind that is we've been searching for a tool for 9 months, and our security team is having a fit. So based on our entitlements, which is all about security, we are a highly secure company. We have many healthcare companies coming into us and we're sending data everywhere. What can you guys tell me to tell my security team to let me purchase a tool?
That's good.
So
That's good.
I'll go first.
Say-
So I would say is tell your security team to use our tool. The reason why is that the things that they actually evaluate, how do you speed up security? The bottleneck that happens in security is having readily available information. Have the information in a way that is constructed that they can actually query it, rather than a bunch of documents that you have to produce and give to them. And then they check them and then you have to keep doing it. And you have many authors of documents. Well, that also is a problem. So the only way to get that away from that is to actually have one of our tools to actually catalog the things that they care about, which is the risk part of the data, the actual thing that's going to be put into the different applications. So that's what I'd be starting to talk with. If we can help you help yourself.
Cool. There's a few thoughts I could perhaps add. So firstly, every single one of us goes through this with all kinds of different customers in many different industries, some of them even into security, national security type organizations, defense organizations. So you can imagine the what you have to go through to be used by those sorts of organizations, banks, financial services, and so on, who are very, very rigorous in looking at security. So we're quite familiar with the constraints and the requirements, and most of us are probably certified in various different technology security standards, SOC 2 and ISO standards for these things. And we can preempt a lot of this by actually providing you with detailed security profiles, the types of questions. We've asked these questions so many times. These are the questions that you need to know, and here's our ready-made responses. So those are all in helping you to just navigate the actual process of evaluating our security controls. The other thing I'd say, though, is there are two other points. One of the things about a modeling tool is that we don't keep any instance data. So the majority of security controls are around personally identifiable information. And there's very, very little, if any, in our tools. Perhaps just the email address of the user is probably the only identifiable piece of information that you'd find in our platform. We're not got customer data. We don't have credit cards. We don't have anything that anybody's, that type of security concern is about. So that helps. And then the third thing I'd say is that there are all kinds of deployment models that can satisfy really, really rigorous constraints. So although we're a cloud-first company, we can offer various other options, private cloud, or even an on-premise installation if that's a requirement.
And your team has answered all my questions really well. So I'll just put it out there that we saw you at the Twin Cities Business Architecture Conference. And so we've been working closely with your team as well as the Sparks team, who's been really helpful. We just can't get our security team past it. So I'll probably be talking to all of you a little bit later to get more information.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. We have another one in the room.
Yeah, for me, it's not a question, it's to help her to answer to her problem, because I went through that.
Yeah.
We have Sparks implemented in AT&T, who is not also the easiest company to implement things. But what we did, we brought the security team into the mix. So that means they are using our tool for their needs. So that was useful. At the deploy level, we were having different options, but we decided to go to a private cloud. Well, we're using Amazon, but it's our cloud. We didn't want for the SaaS solution. And as explained, because we are integrated with our single sign-on, so we don't keep any really user personal information, and we only have information about the application, how they talk to each other, how they are mapped, information a little bit boring for any hacker. But yeah, what we did, we brought the security team, network team, well, everybody into the architecture tool, because they wanted to be able to validate their steps into the different life cycle of the product. So that really was the way we went around it. And of course, they had to do this white box, black box, or seals, but that more. What I mean, the security team in reality, what they are doing is more like protecting themselves, like in case of audit. So it's more like admin part. They're not really protecting us. I hope they're not listening. So, but it is what I saw. And then we made it. So, and we made it for 2 AT&T, one in Latam, because I'm keeping Chris close from the total company I'm going to, from Latam, and then after we did in Mexico. So it's possible. And I am here to help if that can. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Excellent. So it sounds like there's hope. All right, we have questions online?
Yes,
Please.
there are a number of people wanting to know who among you is able to provide the modeling tools for business capability and heat maps specifically. There are obviously other modeling things that they're interested in, but this is coming up many times.
Oh, I'd pretty much guess we all do.
Just raise our hands.
Right. So, but of course, trying to leverage the Guild reference models as a good starting point. And of course, one of the great things about the reference models that I've noticed is it helps diminish some of the finger pointing and not invented here. And this is the way I look at it, introducing kind of a neutral third party, content built by experts, I think is a really great way to, accelerate that.
Absolutely. Do we have another one?
Yes.
Excellent.
This individual's company is a follower of Gartner and the Magic Quadrant. Do these panelists think that Gartner tools classification fully covers the needs for BA practice?
Good one.
Well, I mean, I think you said for
Yeah.
plan view, you
Yeah.
guys.
We just said,
And so did we.
Yeah.
I mean, so there is a risk in the sense that C-levels are like, pick the top 5 from Gartner. And again, nothing against the people that are in the upper quadrant that, go through that. But I do think over relying on that can limit, some of your options, in my opinion.
and we get those questions during the evaluation period, if we actually get to the table with them.
Right.
And when we find out somebody's looking for a tool, right? We want to talk to them. We have the rationale why and that usually keeps us into play and we typically win. So.
Yeah, I would say the scoring for the enterprise architecture Magic Quadrant is very oriented towards EAs, technology management use cases. Very little that you would say this is pure BA evaluation, other than perhaps a little bit into the space of innovation and transformation. But really, it's mostly about how you manage technology assets and govern and do pure modeling for diagramming downstream.
So I actually had a question for you on that as a follow-on. Do you feel that, and this is for all of you actually, because you mentioned it before about sort of the IT being the first wave of modeling and now the business architecture is catching up. Do you think that sort of, is it a legacy momentum of the IT effect kind of being used as a launch board, or do you see that perhaps becoming more pure BA and enterprise architecture as time goes on?
Well, my view is that Gartner, I don't think Gartner positions themselves as being any kind of a standard or any, their expertise in business architecture is fairly light, and even the publications they don't really publish much that you would say sets standards or directs how you might do architecture as a practice. But I do think that what Gartner is definitely seeing, and this perhaps is why I think we've been fortunate enough to be well positioned there, is that architecture is actually really going through this renaissance, and it's this idea that architecture needs to come out of IT, come out of that, the high priesthood, the dark art of enterprise architecture, and become something that's more meaningful and accessible to a broader stakeholder group. And so tools, like we obviously try and promote that we do, tools that make architecture less of that nature and affect and focus much more on the business stakeholders, making it meaningful, accessible, engaging for a business stakeholder to get access to modeling content. That really, I think, is where the new trend is going. The last point I'll just quickly make on that is, yeah, and this is a point we can all debate. Even using the term architecture is holding us on the wrong side of the chasm. We need to cross over. And the people on the other side of the chasm, they don't want to be architects. So if you tell them this is architecture and you need to do it, they're already not listening, right? So we have to find a language that is the language that they speak on the other side of the chasm. And that's what we're principally focused on right now. So we actually talk about our platform, not as an architecture tool at all, but as a digital operating model platform. And what we do is we turn the operating model into an asset, a tangible, engaging, interactive asset. And that suddenly is something that everybody needs, right? And I think maybe that's the first step, but I think as a mission for us, if we want to make this stuff more mainstream, we have to start realizing that big hump, if you look at the early majority, late majority, the 70% that we haven't reached yet, they are going to need us talking to them in different terms than we use today.
Yeah, and I think, we have a proclivity of, particularly as an architect, of getting into some of the implementation details. We talk about architecture. What does it mean to do architecture? How do you do architecture? But one of the challenges is that most of the people that we do architecture for do not care at all about it. They care about the outcomes. And so I echo your point about, for certain audiences, calling it architecture can set you back for all sorts of reasons. They remember, the nasty thing that happened 10 years ago. Because one of the weird things about architecture is it seems to be kind of this zombie phoenix thing. It rises, it gets funding, gets some support momentum, and then the market changes, the pendulum shifts, and let's get rid of the enterprise architects. But they just can't really quite kill it off because it seems to get, resurrected, a little bit later. So we've had, ironically, I remember one client we had some years ago said, we don't call this enterprise architecture anymore to our stakeholders because it just freaks them out. It turns them off. We call it enterprise decision support. Really about what is the outcome that we're providing to you guys, not so much, the sausage baking and the implementation details.
Cool.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've got 3 folks here in the room. You want to start over here and then we'll bounce over your way? Okay.
So as an EA, my dream is that there is a tool where I can go in and model down to the nitty gritty with all of the detail. And then I don't have to step away, come back and redo it in PowerPoint for my executives.
Yep.
So my question for you guys is, could you each describe the capabilities of your solutions to allow me to be nitty gritty and yet give my CIO something pretty that she can talk about and share with the chief marketing officer and the COO without making me redo things?
Yeah, that's actually one I can answer. Yeah, actually, our tool allows you to do anything in the tool and export it to any Microsoft side. So if you want it to Excel, go ahead. If you want it to PowerPoint at any given moment, you can do that. A lot of people look at architectures as pretty pictures. Well, they're not. They're just objects that you want to represent as what the point of getting across, right? So when we look at that, the export into documentation, the one question I would ask back is, are you looking for documentation or are you looking to transform into the digital world? Why are we still doing PowerPoint? Why are we still doing this? When we look at the holistic value of what the architecture is and going to PowerPoint, we might lose something from that. So we can look at that in many different ways. And when we look at EA, it's very powerful from the bottom up and from the top down. So when we go into PowerPoint, we want to make sure that they see what is necessary, but then also make sure that we can drive the conversation to the rest of the architecture at any given point.
I don't want to go into PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I want my
yeah,
models.
good.
I want my users to be able to access the information. I want your tool to take my model and raise it up to a
Well,
level of
yeah,
generality
yeah,
that they
yeah.
can.
Yes, I can
Yeah,
make it
but-
as pretty, you can make it as pretty as you want, I promise. There's lots of different colors and each diagram or element means something different. So I think, yes, I understood your point, but it's, how do you still meet the stakeholder need as well, where they may not want to ever open the tool?
Right. Well, and again, keep people away from implementation details. I mean, most people do not want to know about the guild Metamodel or Archimate notation. That might be a really important part of your practice. So my experience is hide and obfuscate that. Again, it's an implementation thing people don't often really care about, and it's distracting. Like, what's that weird symbol in the upper right-hand corner? Because what's so complicated about a box and line diagram, right? Or a nested box diagram? You might know it's a capability model or value streams. So in our software, I mean, you guys might have some similar features. There's a little switch you can flip on any diagram to basically turn it into what's called custom style, where you can make any UML, Archimate, SysML, BPMN diagram look like it was done in Visio or PowerPoint. But it still has the semantical grounding of the Metamodel and the modeling language and the semantics that you're using. So you kind of basically fool them into thinking it's a PowerPoint, except it's still grounded in a rigorous modeling environment.
I would actually challenge that executives and middle managers don't care about a model, right? They're looking for dashboard, they're looking for information. They're looking for the analytics, the reason why. The model is the basis of understanding the dependencies. It actually provides that. So in ours, we have access into dashboarding, right? Power BI capabilities or Tableau or whatever you want to use. But also we have a new platform called PlanView.me, which is a widget driven from all the applications we have, from the architecture, the agile, the innovation, all in one place. That's the only place they go. And they'll be able to see all that information, right? And they'll never have to see the platform. They just see the result of modeling. And that's really what executives and managers need.
Yeah, I think your point is a really good one, because you have multiple different stakeholders that you need to be able to address with your tool. The modelers, what we call the collaborators, people who participate in putting knowledge in but don't need to do the modeling, and then what we call the viewers, who just need to see certain views that you want to share with them. So we take a lot of trouble to try to make each of their experience totally different and allow you as a modeler to configure a page, do your heat mapping, put all the stuff that you want on it, and then still keep the live interactivity of it. But what we call take a snapshot, which basically means just save the state of what you've configured and then put that onto a view that is available for a viewer only. So they can come in, they can just see the pages that you can even put it into a presentation mode. They can potentially see as if you're presenting it in PowerPoint, but it is all live and interactive. You can click through, you can expand, you can, and you've not lost, you haven't gone out to PowerPoint. You're still in the tool presenting it through a presentation mode.
Cool. Head over here for this, Mike.
Yeah, what are some of the things that companies that are successful implementing your products do, or what are their characteristics, especially when first buying the product? How do they successfully implement it? Maybe what are some of the things that they shouldn't do that you've seen mistakes made?
I'll take that. Okay. Well, this is a really good one. I think so a tool honestly is going to change your practice. There's no doubt about it that it's going to give you so much more flexibility, dynamism, multiple dimensions, traceability, alignment, all that stuff that you just don't get on that static artifact. So the first thing is you're going to go into a whole new way of being able to present information. What I often see people doing when they get started is they think that one of two things, they need to go and model everything. And so they go into this massive mode of loading everything up and just building content, and then going and showing it to the world and saying, look what I've done, and this is our organization. And everybody looks at it and can't recognize anything about their organization in what you've shown them. They haven't come on the journey with you. They don't know what you're trying to explain, and you've lost them from the start. So I think the best way to do this is to start where there's a problem and go and solve the problem and show how you can use business architecture to solve a problem. And one of the best problems you can solve is you can find an initiative. There's initiatives have budget, they have attention of the organization, they have the focus and have people motivated to try and solve a problem. And if you find the leader of that initiative and you look over their shoulder, you will almost invariably see, unless they have a business architect under their arm, they will be looking at a roadmap or they'll be looking at a resource plan. They've gone straight to delivery questions. And if you show them a value stream canvas, you say, why don't we step back from delivery and look at what it is that we're actually transforming? Let's understand where the problems are, where the maturity gaps are, where the pain points are, where the opportunities for optimization are. That's going to help us be successful. And immediately you give people a common conceptualization of what change they're trying to address. And I've found that to be one of the best uses I've ever seen of an architecture contribution that can immediately win that team over and just do your one single value stream. Because, by the way, there's a one-to-one relationship invariably between an initiative and a value stream. So almost always be able to go and say, there's an initiative, let me go and see what value stream that initiative's working on. And give them that canvas and you'll have won a lot of friends and make a really good start.
Yeah, I'd say, how many of you have tried the Big Bang approach? Right? So Big Bang never works. So come in with an agile approach, right? It's small, consumable, done in less than 3 months. Say, what is that scoping that you want to do for implementation? Have a customer, not the business architecture, not the architecture team. Have a customer that is asking you for something that you've been asked for out of your spreadsheets, and you want to now put it into the system. That'll be the fastest implementation you have. The thing I actually get a lot of times in RFPs and stuff like that, they have a checklist. Can you build a capabilities map? Come on, I could do that in like 5 minutes. Give me something hard. Come on. Give me a solution that you want to actually have. And let's then use that solution on whatever champion you have. Because they're going to engage you because they have a need for it. If you don't have a champion, you're probably not at the right time to actually be looking at a tool. We can always help you figure out a use case, but it's going to be dummy data because you haven't collected it yet. That's why initiatives are a good way to start. Just find an initiative that was completed already. The documentation's already been done. You just have to harvest the information if you don't have an audience. So you get the documents and fill in the holes. So those are things that I've used, you're in and out of my engagements, and it comes out that they actually understand how to use the platform, because it's really not about the platform. It's about what was that business solution that you were trying to solve for.
And I'd add, certainly build on everything they said. Another way to say it, again, taking an agile approach, try to figure out how to spend the least amount of time in the tool, creating the least amount of content for the greatest amount of benefit. Because again, the Big Bang, people end up getting a false sense of security, like, hey, I got this cool modeling tool, I can do all this crap I could never do before, which may be true, but it's really easy to get distracted and forget that you're trying to actually deliver something useful to somebody. But also try to see if you can exploit and leverage any existing data you have. So again, building all of this from scratch. So, guild reference models be a part of it. If you've got an APM, tool or a CMDB, ServiceNow, there's other systems that have useful information you may be able to harvest and get something useful out of it. And then also try to see if you can build towards, distributing the use of the tool to a broadest number of people. Again, hard to do initially, but you really want to make the tool indispensable to the way people do their work on a day-to-day basis, but spread out the responsibility to keep it current, which is the toughest part of all of this. Getting the tool, installing the tool, you're doing an initial population of data, that's easy, not to say it's really easy, but keeping it current and relevant on a day-to-day basis, the governance of the content is really, really difficult. So if you spread it out and make it everybody's job, goes a lot better.
Nice.
Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
well,
Nope, I'll give you
okay.
a chance.
So I'll just keep adding to the portfolio here. The biggest way to be successful within any type of deployment, doesn't matter what you're doing, is keep the team small. I would ask yourself the one question: what are we trying to accomplish? The follow-up question is, why are we doing it? What's the value we need out of it? From that value, how do we leverage it? If we go through that process and then take the processes that we've already been successful with, how do you then continue to instill that? And you do that from one small team to another, the success builds on each other. So it doesn't matter what tool you have, that success is a roller coaster, right? It's always going to keep going in one direction, and you're going to be able to gain that momentum, you know, as you move forward.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is avoid the big bang, go for the bigger bang for the buck.
Yes.
Okay.
Limit your audience.
Yeah.
Because you got 5, 6 different disciplines, first time they're coming in, but you're focused on one area, they're not gonna see themselves and they're gonna like, all right, I give up. And then now you have to go try to win them over again. So keep it small, relevant to the use case. Only the people that have to be involved, be involved.
I see a group of people that have a unique perspective in business architecture, right? So Terry, you started to hit on my question, is this whole chasm thing, right? So as we are continually trying to develop business architecture within these organizations and come to that strategy level, because we have so much to offer through this framework. But when I see the survey that comes out, you know, Wendy, that I'm taking each year, we're staying right. We have an opinion that we're staying at the same spot over the last couple of years. But you have an interesting perspective. I have the organization I'm in. You see a variety of organizations. What are you seeing? How can we get over this chasm? What is your opinion and suggestions?
Well, I think that's the topic of digital for me. That's exactly what we're constantly talking about and trying to address is I think the first thing is we have to demystify it. It has to be something, if you go and read Jeffrey Moore's book, the people on the left side of the chasm, the early adopters, the innovators, the ones that are currently using the tool, they love working on things that are new, and they're quite happy that it's not mature, untested. They're quite happy to be the first users of any technology. The unfortunate thing is they're typically mavericks, lone wolves, not really great at bringing the whole organization with them. And they often just try things and move on. And so you'd be hard pressed to find someone there who's really going to help you to get across the chasm. So we're realizing is that we have to sell as vendors to a completely different person on the other side who has a very different characteristic. They're looking for mature products. They're looking for methods that are proven and work. They're looking for case studies that have demonstrated ROI, and they're pragmatists. They can definitely be the person that can go and win the battle for you, but they're not going to put themselves out there and risk it unless they're really sure that it's going to work. So we've got to recognize that that is the type of person we're looking for now. The business leader that has the power to really drive the change. And those sorts of people are much higher up in the organization. They're not the people that are at the user level doing the evaluation of tools. We have to go and talk to the people that are actually going to get a benefit of the tool and probably aren't even really aware of what business architecture can do for them. So this, I think, is the big challenge that we have to make architecture compelling and invaluable to an organization is we have to go and talk to that senior person. Now, my language at the moment is the operating model. We're creating the operating model, right, as an asset. Who owns the operating model? Well, probably the chief operating officer. So this is who we're starting to talk to now. We're trying to find language that we can go to that person and say, you know, you're driving this business. You're trying to optimize the organization. This is the best method you can find to optimize your operating model. You're the one probably who's constantly having to evolve and transform and innovate. This is the method for doing that. How would you possibly transform something that you haven't got a really good picture, holistic view of what it is that you're transforming. Very unlikely to succeed. So that's the place to start. And I think once you can get that sort of person brought in, then you've really got the possibility of broad adoption of the strategy across the organization. And that's when business architecture is really going to become mainstream.
Don't want this.
I'd also say that it needs to be embedded the process of change. So PMOs, you start with PMOs and start, like I said, from the right being technical, left being strategy innovation. You need to start shifting from APM type work, process associated to applications, because that's a result of understanding the business architecture, that piece of technology running. So we need to start pushing, and they're writing documents already, and that's why I keep going back to initiatives and PMOs, because they're already doing work and they're already drawing diagrams, just not with your help. So you need to engage yourself with those project teams to start, so you can actually get some buy-in. And I heard a lot of speakers up there talking about doing those types of things. But the SPM space that I was talking about, strategic portfolio management, that's where the leaders are actually looking at. They're looking at, how do I change my organization digitally? If you actually talk and speak in that language, you're going to start getting buy-in. And if you can show value in strategic portfolio management instead of architecture, you're actually going to get those people engaged with you. Says, hey, I can help you. I can increase your productivity. I can increase your product success, because the more I know, the less likely I'm going to fail as much, right? So those are things that you can do to embed it.
But I do think there is not to be too pessimistic and cynical, there is I think a glass ceiling to some extent. And in many ways, it's because the people that were educated back in the day got their MBAs, to help provide a foundation. What's the likelihood that they heard that business and enterprise architecture was an essential part of running their business and delivering on strategy? They probably heard about accounting and risk management and HR. Does the CEO wake up one day, why do we have all these accountants, man? Can't we go back and do our stuff in Excel? Why do we have to spend, all this money on, Oracle or, or SAP? So there is a problem with executive education that makes it really challenging. I think there's promise that is going to be, that gap will be closed eventually, but it does make things, I think, particularly challenging.
Great, thank you. Other question?
I want to get a bit away from philosophical discussion and bring you to the, let's say, technical side. I'm representing a big insurance group with 50 companies in 30 countries. We have one enterprise architecture tool that is keeping all the environment technical systems of all subsidiaries and the holding. We have another one that is we are using to communicate with big four companies that are delivering us some financial IFRS and ESRS models. And we're still, let's say, feeling the lack of real business architecture. When I'm looking for a tool, I would first discuss whether your tool are covering the core business architecture domains. This is something that is a must, whether this corresponds with the guild model. Second, whether it's covering the enterprise part, the technical application, data architecture and stuff that is clear coming from Togo mainly. If not, whether you could integrate with such tool. Second, do you cover also the extended business architecture domains? Could I define the strategy there? Do I have the business, let's say, balance scorecard, Hoshin Kanri, what the colleagues before me was explaining? Are they still in the PowerPoint or in Excel, or I could define there and to bring this immediately to link them with the capabilities and value streams? Could I define also the initiatives, the metrics, etc.? If not, Could I integrate with something else, ServiceNow or whatever? Because finally, there is no monster tool that is covering everything. It's a part of ecosystem. And for me, important question for you guys is what your system is covering as a basic core business architecture domain, what part from the extended domain is covered, and what is the ecosystem that you have around your systems in terms of integrating with other monsters that are, let's say, on the field. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll start. So enterprise architecture should be your most integrated platform in the entire organization. I'll just start there. If your EA tool isn't tied into ServiceNow, your Apptio, your TBM models, your financial models, your asset license management, CMDB type stuff in the ServiceNow, but also normalized using products like Flexera. It has to be integrated. There's no way an enterprise architecture or a business architecture can keep up with the demand of data management. It has to be automated. That's the only way to actually make this successful. Otherwise, you're going to be project good at best. So our platforms are designed for integration. We have an extensive amount of model, and it's extensible. So anything you don't have, you can add. So if you have a new property or new relationship or new object, doesn't matter what framework, TOGAF, FIAF, TIAF, MODAF, all of them can be made in EA. Now, symbology that you're using in modeling is another question, like Archimate and things like that. We don't follow symbology. We follow data and object models, so we can actually provide you the information across all frameworks, like TOGAF and stuff like that as well. So, I know a lot of the other products do the same.
No, we do the same.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest things there is how do you represent the data throughout the life cycles? How do you integrate it with other domains? So it's not just from the business side, because we have to look at everything. So the business as a whole, but then each department, and how do you tie them all together? If we don't do that, then we're really stovepiping ourselves into, we're doing it this way, but we're not telling anybody. And then we start doing the finger pointing game, right? So when we look at that, having interoperability within any type of solution is a must, because if you can't, not everything is perfect. So you have to be able to tie it to something else, because there's other tools that you've already standardized on. So how do you interop with that data? How do we interchange with it? And then, you mentioned the API side. That's the best part of it, because you can then customize that however you want within our tool set.
The hardest part is normalizing the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they call it? What do we call it? And do you agree that the definition is the same?
Okay.
I think the crux of your question really is asking, what's the extent of our meta models? How much coverage do we have of the concepts that you need to maintain across all this landscape? And well, in our case, we have the underpinnings of the platform is what we call an enterprise ontology. Ontology is that conceptualization of the domain, all the concepts in the domain, and most importantly, their semantic relationships between them. And that gives you a really good map of how everything in an organization is connected. And of course, our coverage, we try to do everything. And there's 250 odd major classes included in that ontology. Now, that doesn't mean that our tool is going to be a tool that you can use to become the system of record for every single one of those things. That's not the intent. We want to be able to use tools that are good at what they do. Process tools, let them do process modeling. Project tools, let them do project. But we need to reach into those tools and access the information that they have and connect it up to the information ontology as a whole. And so that's what really is the goal of a repository like ours, is to create a web of connectedness across all of your enterprise knowledge, that you can query that and surface it up into the relevant canvases. That's how we approach it.
Thank you. I've seen yesterday your presentation about integration of AT&T, so
Yep. Well, I mean, and like many of us, particularly those that have been affiliated with the OMG for, also many years, there is not a modeling language or framework that we have not implemented. But again, the wisdom is trying to figure out which of those are pertinent to, the problem you're trying to solve. Again, try to figure out the least amount of the tool to get the greatest amount of benefit. And like, other people talked about, start small, look for a success story. And again, make sure that you don't want your architecture practice to be an ivory tower, right? And you don't want your architecture tooling and repository to be, again, isolated. So again, integration across the landscape, I think is pretty critical.
thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we take one from online?
Online, yes. How are you thinking about AI as it relates to your platform and then specifically providing additional insights based on your knowledge base?
Well,
Good one.
so we've already implemented Copilot as capability in our platform at planview.me that actually ties into right now the portfolio world of project management and asset planning and scheduling and all that. So you can ask the system, says, hey, what are my at-risk projects? And it will scan throughout the entire database and start bringing back information. And it'll actually tell you that, hey, you have these 3 that are needing to be addressed, right? So, and then when we start to hook it into the architecture, remember I said widget driven. So each of our platforms having that widget is the ability to actually tie into the AI and actually I have the breadth of knowledge of all the architecture. You come back and tell me what the infrastructure impacts are or process impacts are. Because right now it's just work impacts right now the way it's set up. But it's going to be EA and BA and DA and TA all brought together on the things that actually are going through that work stream are the things that are in the architecture, not in the work problem. Right. So we want to bring all that up in and it brings an answer. It'll actually shift it. It says, yes, I want to shift it. It'll actually shift it forward. So that is the starting of the AI. So, we're a year in, came out with some good knowledge and insights, and we've gone all hog into building out AI. So planview.me is ours.
And we're still kind of looking into it, dipping our toes. At the risk of extinction, I'd like to claim an arrogant position that, AI might replace, programmers and developers, but it'll never replace an architect. In my opinion, again, might be just asking for trouble. But one of the things and trying to work a little bit more with some of the teams that know more about that. But if I think about what thing could AI really help me and the teams I work with, and one of it is it's mapping. So for example, what I'm curious about doing, remember we talked yesterday, we had to map the capabilities to the value stream stages and kind of did an educated guess. And I've got a more rigorous method in mind, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just thinking, well, couldn't we train, a large language model about the perspective of how to make those connections? Because again, mapping things, across tools and across domains is very labor intensive. And again, you might have to do a big bang to populate it initially. Again, you got to keep it up to date, but wouldn't it be cool if you could point, an AI, agent towards, this reference model, that reference model, this inventory of applications, and just so say, hey, could you just kind of do at least an initial draft preliminary mapping of applications capabilities? Particularly if you have 1,000 applications. So I'm looking at it, a way to help diminish the amount of administrative time that architects often spend in these tools so that they can go out and do what only the humans can do, which is build rapport, connect with people, deliver results. But a lot of times we do get sucked into kind of that data management stuff. So I think that's a great place for AI to help us out.
I know nothing about AI. Yeah, I'm not, but it's okay. Our company is definitely doing it. in multiple domains. I definitely think from a modeler's perspective or an architect's perspective, you can utilize it as a great starting point. Ask for something and get a rubric of data and then expand it on that yourself, right? So when we look at, hey, I want to write a document, I stare at a blank page, I don't know where to start. Hey, let me ask, hey, what about this? Give me that, and it takes you to that next level. And it may even give you some architectural benefits by drawing you something, and you extend that drawing. So there could be some really big benefits, but you're never going to take the human out of the loop.
Yeah, I think that architecture repositories actually represents a really great place for organizations to focus their AI initiatives. And the reason I say that is that if you think of us as consumers, we have infinite knowledge available to us on the web. We just go and ask Google or chatbot of any question we want, and we get perfect answers straight away. Not perfect, but quite close enough. Close enough. As soon as we come inside the enterprise, it's almost like we've gone back 10 years in our ability to ask questions, right? We can't do the same thing, and we can't get the same answers. And because by design, knowledge in an enterprise is siloed and kept separate. So it's really difficult for you to get that holistic view with your AI. You're going to have just siloed AI solutions, right? Unless you have this connected web of this web of connectedness that ties it all together. So that's why I think we have this great potential. Now, the obvious answers, what would you do with AI or co-pilots and things like that to build your models better? But I actually think the really creative answers will come from enhanced decision-making, because that's what our tools are really designed to do, or our practice is really designed to do, is help people make better decisions. So once you've built your models and you've got that holistic perspective of the traceability and alignment between everything, then you're really well positioned to be able to proactively recommend and build intelligent insights, prompt users with ideas on how they can make those decisions, and really surface our vision is this sort of enterprise cockpit where executive level people are having a dashboard of real-time perspectives of how the business is operating, and they're able to pull the levers and move the needle on the dials of how the business is operating. And that's where we can get to, but the only way to get there is structured knowledge is what we do of tying it all together and explaining the logic of the business.
I'll add, so one of the other processes, we have a product called Biz. It's a value stream for DevOps. So it actually is Flow Metrics, the author of Project to Product, is our CTO, and he brought TaskTop was brought into our company. And we actually take all the metrics of Flow, how the capacity of creating and moving features through development process through delivery. So there's a dashboard that's there. That's another widget on the PlanU.me, the cockpit like he's talking about, has the ability to actually pull that, and that information is also used in AI. And the question that you actually just type it in or talk to it and say, hey, I want to know about this, and it will give it back to you already. I mean, that's where we're there now with those work products and development products.
Cool. So we've actually got a question back here in the room.
Sure. Thank you all for bringing us cross-industry perspectives. My question is for my plan view friend. Now that you got us excited about strategic portfolio management, and I think I heard you say visibility into enterprise-wide capacity. How does that work for a large global company with multiple lines of business, cultural and legal differences across regionals, across all geographical regions and different functions? And how does that available capacity flow from where it is available to where it is needed in a different part of that siloed organization?
Yeah, so I would say if you had the enterprise capacity model, you're the first because every organization, you said they're global, right? There are different languages, different laws, all kinds of things that play into different industries and domains of knowledge, right? So you have to take all those things into consideration and you have to normalize. Again, the normalization part is the hardest part. You can't have an enterprise model that actually talks the same language without normalization. So we have to actually go through that process first before we get to that cross-enterprise vision of globally doing all the same things. I have many global companies. I have very large ones, right? That are, in the work world, because I say work world is portfolio project, in Agile, right? That world, we're doing those types of things with those customers, and the EA is to support that. But every organization we work with has a different body of knowledge. So until they start bringing their teams together, there's no way a platform can ever help them, because you just people can't stop on each other. And somebody wants their framework and the other one's like, you put them in there, but you haven't got to an enterprise model yet. So you want one of each of those. That's a really hard task.
Yeah.
So it's best to actually sometimes separate until you can, for about 10 to 15 years wait from that enterprise model you're looking at. But you can start to work towards it by at least talking the same way.
Cool. So thank you. We are just a couple minutes before 5. I think we might have time for one more short question online.
Our organization's business architecture is closely aligned to the BizBox. How recognizable would the components of your tool be to our non-technical business architects, and are workarounds required to maintain alignment with the BizBox?
Well, I think many of us, we can take the guild reference models, load them up. They might look a little different depending on, the tool. But I'd like to believe that they would find things very recognizable based on however people are managing that right now. So I think we could probably all do a pretty decent job of that.
I'd qualify that answer though. Is what is the knowledge of the people that are trying to consume it and what the reference model actually is? Because what they're seeing, do they understand what it is? Otherwise, other than a box or a piece of text that says, hey, this is what it is, they know what it is and what it's used for. Then I would say yes, because we do have the model. We all have them, right? Or the capability to actually even extend beyond them.
But a lot of times I think people are using, business and enterprise architecture to help establish a new vocabulary for talking about the business, because that's one of the big problems is that people talk past each other. They're using the same word for different things, different words for the same thing. And again, it can be really difficult to get people to agree on a standard term on, set of terms, which is why, again, sometimes bringing in a neutral third party like the guild reference models can be a way to say, we're not going to try to reconcile your language with their language. We're going to make a brand new language. And that really can help, break down the barriers for, communication. But to your point, initially people are going to go, what the heck is the acquired product value stream? I don't get that at all.
It goes back to this question you just asked me about enterprise model, right? If I have trouble actually getting people to understand what capability map is, that's one set of data. We have lots of data that needs to be connected together. So we need to understand how to actually cultural change, political change, organizational change that constantly is happening, people in, people out. How do we keep everybody in the know? So you have to have a knowledge management practice inside of the organization. That's why I say EA and the platform itself can actually facilitate the knowledge management practice, because we really have the ontology, as Terry called it, that is sitting there with all the information about connectivity and dependencies of the framework. And you could use it in change management to understand what's the change impact if I have this knowledge. So now you're starting to build, and if you don't have knowledge management in your enterprise, you really need to start thinking about that if you want an enterprise model, because that's the only way you're going to get there, because you have to share all the systems. Everybody needs to know what everybody else is doing, and knowledge management is the only way to get there.
Cool. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So there seems to be a little confusion because there were 3 essentially the same questions. All of the vendors that are in our program are aligned with
Yes.
this BizBox. At the core, capabilities, the extended aspects, all of them are aligned with it. They wouldn't be in our program
Otherwise, we get
otherwise.
kicked out.
So
Yeah.
if you're a BizBox person, you are safe with any of these tools. They all support slightly different use cases in different ways. They're all great tools and great guys, by the way. But there seemed to be some confusion about that.
Yeah, I'd say, like you said, we're on the vendor list. We had to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the minimum is to be able to consume the industry templates. I think the interesting one that I heard from Jim yesterday, which I'm going to actually go and try now, is to take well, in our case, we're an RDF at our tools, so we're going to go and take the RDF Metamodel output, I guess, that is produced and see whether we can consume that. But I think that's a far better
First language.
perspective aligned UI to the guild.
That was 15 years ago. No, 25 years ago.
Yeah, did you have your hand up over here? I was gonna say, I think we're at time. So any last comments you'd like to make?
No.
To the audience here?
No.
No, you're good? Said everything you want to say? All
I
right.
would like to say I'm amazed at the quality of the work that you all do, which every year just gets better and better and better. So as a vendor, it's just awesome because you push us in our boundaries and we learn. I come here all the way from Australia every single year because it's the best place to learn what you guys are doing and where you take it to practice. So thank you for having us and letting us in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being up here on stage with us. All right. And thank you all for your questions and your participation. It has been a healthy conversation. It's what we like to have here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For a fantastic panel. I might need another mic. I will. Maybe somebody. Can get your mic. All right, thanks for a great panel and a fantastic day today. To all the presenters and also to all of you here and online for the fantastic dialogue that you've had around it. So we'll just say a few things to close out. We'll start with any questions and then we have a couple questions for you. Are there questions from anybody? Got one there? Yeah, cool. Sorry to.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Yes, we're working on solving the puzzle of business architecture value generation. So that's quantifiable value that we've been able to unlock as business architects. So if anyone here has solved that problem, I would be very curious to talk to you. So please come and see me if there's anything you'd like to discuss. So just a plug for that. Thank you.
And there is also Tales from the Front on the Guild website. So not necessarily all measurable, but those are great case studies and open for everybody. Cool. Fantastic. Any other questions? Yeah.
Will the recordings be available for us to watch again?
Cool. Yeah. And I think Ruth or somebody needs a microphone. Ruth probably needs one. You have it? Cool.
There we go. Hello. OMG will send out the links to a private YouTube channel, and it'll be, I don't know, hopefully shorter than a week, but it'll be about a week before it gets out.
Thank you so
There's
much.
editing involved.
And do you know how long will people have access to them once available?
Last year's registrants are still available. So,
Oh, fantastic.
as far as I know, they're not turning them off.
Great. Other questions in the room? Online, Ruth, any questions online?
They asked about what time tomorrow starts.
8:45 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Promptly.
And is it possible to contact industry mentors? If yes, what is the best way?
Industry mentors.
Is the question on the 4 industry reference model mentors? I'm assuming.
I'm assuming.
Okay. Well, Kelly Eckmeyer and Andrew Semple and Yvonne Blenoff, who's I think stepped out, and myself, William Ulrich, are all available. There's different ways to reach us. You can go through the guild. There are reach outs. You can go through there and search the directory and click and send something to us. You can also find in the directory our names and our email addresses if you want to send something privately to any one of us. We all have that. You can also connect with us. I'm assuming all four of us are on LinkedIn. So we should be easily found through that way. So there's lots of options on how to track us down.
Perfect. Anything else online? How about, oh, sir, did you have a question? Just making you walk, that's all.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the links will be sent to the registrant's email versus into the guild forum if you're not a guild member yet. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Yes, they're going through OMG. So if you registered with OMG, it will go to the email that OMG has. So absolutely everybody gets them if you've been a full registrant.
We're hoping anybody who wasn't a member when they got here joins on the way out. Anybody joined this week? Just show of hands either in the room. Oh, bunch.
Behind you.
A few hands and online.
Well, yeah. Great.
We'll probably see some hands online.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions for you all as well. Just kind of getting a pulse, no promises, but getting a pulse and giving you something to think about over the next day or so.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. This is an informal sort of thing. So leading up to 2020, when we all stopped going places, in 2019 and prior to that, in addition to the summit, we used to do workshops. Early, those were some reference model working sessions. So a lot of those kind of came out of like a 2015, 16. Some of you were there. I see Cecily was very active in one of those. But past that point, we did a series called the Master Series. And in 2019, we did one of those. They're easier to manage because they're broken into 2 days, with each day broken into 2 half days, with one topic per half day, morning, afternoon, probably leading with the primer. But we did 2 of those. We did one. Was it Brussels or Amsterdam? I can't remember.
I think Amsterdam.
I think it was Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sydney.
And then Sydney in that 2019 year. That was in addition to the summit. Summit, I should tell everybody, and I'll tell them again tomorrow, it will be 1 year from now, right where you are sitting. So plan ahead. If you're in some faraway place, you can start to plan your vacation out to Washington, D.C., Western Virginia. But we are looking at a master series, 2 days, probably with the lead-in primer in Chicago in mid-September. If there is some interest, you guys can think about topics. We will be tossing some topics around. What we don't know is how super advanced we should get, or how basic we should get, or what combination of basic and super advanced that you could kind of spread over 2 days. What we do is it's difficult to do it virtually, having done these, but we take a topic, we do a presentation, we talk about it. We have leaders for each half day, and then we break into groups and people kind of work on stuff and then compare notes at the end of the morning or end of the day. So it kind of kick that around in your thoughts. We'll talk about it again tomorrow morning. OMG, I think it's the week of whatever is kind of the 16th of September. And it would be out by O'Hare, so easy access. I think it's the O'Hare Hyatt. So it'd be really easy access if people needed to fly in, and you could come in from anywhere really into O'Hare is easy. So if you want to just think about that, I don't think we're asking for any. You can give us individual, private feedback, group feedback. We'll bring it up again tomorrow morning and get a little more formal on it, but at least for some questions.
Yep. And the other thing, again, not a promise at all, but we just want to acknowledge a number of you have asked if we're going to do a European summit again, which wouldn't be this year, but just to say.
We're hoping to do a European something. It was a lot easier to do these. We did a couple of years, we did dual summits. They are a huge drain, and they're, for whatever reason, you guys could probably guess, they're harder in Europe to put these things together than they are. And those were 2-day summits, by the way. So these things take a long planning cycle, a long planning window. We do call for abstracts for this one. We're going to probably try to do it again early September. If you haven't presented and you think you're going to get something together that you want to share, everybody online, everybody in the room, think about maybe submitting to that. I don't know that we could pull off a summit. We could very likely pull off something, and it would probably be about a year from June or a year from September. So 2025, we probably could pull off another master series, working series session. So the summits are, I will tell you, if you take it offline, you can talk to all of us who put it together. It is a brutally draining exercise. We had people, we lost 3 people along the way for varying reasons. And they varied. One person left and came back. And that's the beginning of the conversation. But just going through the entire cycle with this whole thing is very, very exercise heavy and very draining. So we can keep all that in mind. We are looking for volunteers. We can bring that up again tomorrow for the marketing and events committee, for certifications and other conversation. But we'll talk about that in the morning. I think that's on our list of things. Okay.
So 8:45 a.m. tomorrow. And for those of you here in the room, reception sponsored by OMG from 6 to 8 p.m., which is a fantastic reception. So it's just outside here. Yeah. So see you there, and see everybody else tomorrow. Thanks.